Welcome guys to Geometric Constraints. We're starting out today with this geometric constraint file. It looks like a hot mess because that's what it is right now. We're going to be applying a specific constraint to each individual set of symbols here so that you can learn what each one does. There are two different ways in which you can see constraints. First and foremost is at the top of the screen under the constraint tab. There is a set of 12 constraints here. You can hover over each one and eventually the little constraint information will pop up. Again, F1 will help you see more information about it. Another way you can do it is to right click, and about halfway down, maybe a third of the way down, there is a create constraint option, which will pull up the list. I find this to be a little bit slower, but it is an option if you prefer it. It's just a matter of personal preference. Alrighty, so I am going to zoom in a little bit here and we are going to get started. The first set of instructions has us making these two lines perpendicular. Remember, perpendicular means that there is a 90-degree angle between the two lines. Right now, I can move either one of these lines around. I can separate them, but they do not remain at a 90-degree angle. They're not currently at a 90-degree angle. So we're going to start out with a simple constraint called the perpendicular constraint. Choose the constraint, make sure that it's highlighted. Choose 1, 2 lines, and you'll notice that the lines automatically snap into the perpendicular position, and the perpendicular constraint symbol will be there until I right click and hit OK. Now my constraint is gone, like the symbol is gone, unless I click on it, but you can notice that I can now move those lines around, but they will remain 90 degrees to each other. Even though if I separate them right here, they are still at a 90-degree angle. They are still perpendicular. If I press the F8 button on my keyboard, it will show you all of the constraints that are applied on anything in your sketch. Again, showing the perpendicular constraint. 1 down, 11 to go. The next instruction says to take this set of 3 lines and make them parallel to another. Again, we have a very handy parallel constraint. Select the parallel constraint, choose a line, choose another line, and you'll notice how those 2 lines snapped parallel to each other. I have applied the constraint between this line and this line. Now I need to apply it to this 3rd line. So again, I have to basically act like I'm starting from scratch, choose the one line and then the other, and I now will right click and hit OK. All 3 of these lines are parallel to each other. You guys will notice that when I hover over one of the constraints, 2 of them will turn red, and 2 of the lines will highlight white. This is basically saying that, hey, there is a parallel constraint between these 2 lines that are white, and these are the 2 constraints. If I hover over the other set of constraints, let me move this one out of the way. Here, it will show you that this line is parallel to that line. All right, our 3rd one is asking us to take these 3 circles, dimension one of them to, we're going to say 0.2, and then make them tangent. A tangent constraint takes 2 lines or 2 circles or a line and a circle and has a single point in which the 2 of them will touch and they will remain as such. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this circle up here and this circle over here. I'm looking to create an upside down Mickey Mouse. So I am going to do a couple of things first. I don't want this circle to move. So I'm going to use the lock constraint or fix constraint. I'm going to choose it and I'm going to choose the center of that circle. That has basically said that this circle will not move. So when I do my other constraints, these 2 circles will move towards this larger one at the top. So let's go ahead and say I want to make this tangent. I chose the tangent constraint. That's the one with the circle and the straight line. I choose the large circle. I choose the small circle. You'll notice that the large circle did not move. It just got bigger. And then I'm going to repeat that. Large circle to next circle. This one moved so that it's on the outer edge. Right click and hit OK. Now, if I change the shape, or size rather, of any of those circles, because I started out with my large circle as the fixed point, the others are going to remain fixed to it, and they are going to change in relation to it as it gets bigger. Let's keep going. This instruction is asking us to make this circle tangent to these two lines. Right now you can see I can move the circle and nothing happens to the lines. If I apply a tangent constraint, again I'm just using the tangent from the circle to the line, the circle is going to get bigger as soon as I click on this line. Right? And I'm going to do it again from this circle to this line. Right click and hit OK. I've made this circle tangent to this line and this line. So when I change the size of the circle, it's going to get smaller. If I try to move my lines, the circle remains intact. It'll just move along that line. Next one here, it's asking us to make the center point of this circle fixed and then attach these two endpoints to that center point. So let's go ahead and fix that center mark. And then we are going to be using what's called a coincident constraint. And a coincident constraint just says that 2 points should be attached, but they can move along any line. We've already seen this in action. You probably haven't noticed it yet. So I'm going to choose my coincident from my center point to the end of the line. And you'll notice that the line snapped to that center point and this little yellow square appeared. I'm going to repeat that process. Right click and hit OK. And now this point where that yellow square is, these lines will all remain intact. I can move them in other ways. Okay, I can make them longer, I can make them shorter, I can move them all around, either one. But they will all stay attached at that point. I can make my circles smaller and bigger. It doesn't matter. This is all attached. Another nice simple constraint is called the concentric constraint. Concentric just means that the circles will be all lined up, similar to a bullseye. The concentric constraint looks like a bullseye, so you just click on it, and we're going to start with our center circle, and then the next one, our center circle, and the smaller one. And it's lined up all three of those circles into a concentric fashion. And you can see the concentric constraint. Again, they're paired. It shows you the outer circle and the middle circle are concentric to each other, and then the outer circle and the inner circle, because that's how I set it up. This one right here is asking us to make them collinear. Collinear means means two or more. Linear is on the same line. So we're just going to be putting these two lines on the same line. So I'm going to choose one and then the other, and you'll notice, right click OK, that they have formed a single line. They are just along the same basically plane or line in space. I can grab one and separate the two of them, but if I move them left or right, they will stay together. I can move them up and down, but they're still staying along the same line. Instructions ask us to make these two horizontal. There is a horizontal constraint. You just select that horizontal constraint. You'll notice as soon as I hover over a line, a yellow dotted line will appear. It's telling me, hey, this is the horizon line. This is the direction that it will go. Click on one, click on the other. They are now horizontal to each other. I can move them up and down, left and right, but they will remain horizontal to each other. We're going to apply a similar to the horizontal to these three lines. We want to make them vertical. Again, you are going to choose the vertical constraint. That yellow dashed line will show up again to tell you this is the vertical direction. Click on one, click on another, click on the third one, whoops, I lost my constraint. There you go. They've all become vertically constrained to each other along that yellow line. Next up is our triangle. We want to make it equilateral, meaning all three sides are the same size. So I'm going to choose my equal constraint, which is just going to make any two things that I select equal. I'll select one side and another. It's automatically changed those two sides to be equal to each other. And I'm going to choose that side and the bottom. Go ahead and right click and hit OK. Now we've applied all of our constraints. If you hover over one of the constraints, you can see that the left and right side are equal to each other. And then if I hover over this one, the left and the bottom are equal to each other. It's fully constrained. So now if I try to, oh, for pity's sake, move it around, it's going to stay all equal distance to each other. If I turn off my constraints, the visibility by hitting F9 button or right clicking and hitting hide all constraints, if I try to change the shape or size rather of my triangle, you'll notice that all three sides stay the same size, no matter how small or large I make it. I'm going to turn my constraints back on visible by hitting the F8 button and go on to the next one. It's asking me here to make these two circles of the same size. Again, I'm going to use the equal constraint. Just choose the two circles. They're automatically made the same size. So if I change the size of one, it changes the size of the other. And then the last one, it's asking us to line up all three circles, the center marks on a horizontal plane. So again, we'll be using the horizontal constraint. We just choose the center mark of all three circles. And all three of them are lined up horizontally. When you're all done, guys, you should have something that looks very similar to this. You should be able to play around. I'm going to turn my constraints visibility off or hide them all. Again, the constraints will keep things from moving. That's the whole point, so that we don't have things moving in ways that we don't want. If you have any questions, let me know.